Hello and welcome back, YouTubers. I'm Protomario, and some of you might have noticed a game that came out called Transformers Devastation. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, gee, this looks an awfully like the cartoon show, and you wouldn't be wrong. Transformers Devastation is a play on the original series that was Transformers, the good old cartoon show. This game was published by Activision, developed by Platinum Games, the same game company that has been behind very action-oriented games. A good title to compare this to would be Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance, the one with Raiden and the samurais and the, cyborg ninja stuff. There you go. If you need a game to compare this to, you got that one. This game is distributed by Hasbro Gaming as well, I should say that. So, what separates this from the other Transformer entries? Because it's available on pretty much every system, well, except for the Wii U, surprisingly enough, but it is available on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. But what exactly separates this from the other games? Well, the War for Cybertron and the other game that was developed by High Moon Studios is pretty solid entry into Transformers, albeit a more futuristic look rather than cartoon show. I do like that a bit better than this one. So this game separates itself by putting you in a more ridiculous cartoony scenario, as if you're actually watching like a Saturday morning cartoon. There are a few complaints that I need to register with this game, and I will register them now before I get into everything else about the game. So let me begin. First off, the camera view is a bit infuriating. It's not that great to begin with. When you try to attack enemies and your camera is going every which way and you can't see the enemy, it's a bit of a problem. I really would have liked a solid lock-on button and the ability to swap around, but I understand that every button is used on the controller, so it's extremely hard to do that. The game itself does suffer from a few problems, repetition being one of the biggest ones. In the first few levels, it's more repetitive than the last levels, which is insane. Generally speaking, these games are about going from point A to point B and destroying everything in the path, fighting a few awesome over-the-top bosses, as Platinum Games has shown in the past that they can do well. I'm not saying that this is a terribly done action game, it just doesn't add anything new to the pot. In fact, I would say this is almost a carbon copy of Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance. But that's not necessarily a bad thing if you like a cartoon Transformers paint job on top of it. The thing is, though, they have a dodge system in it. And the dodge system is implemented in such a way that you're going to be wearing out your right bumper very quickly. I mean, I had to say I probably pressed my right bumper more in this game than I have ever pressed in my life. And it doesn't reward you for perfectly timed dodges. It rewards you if you just don't get hit. See, the problem arises when you start the game off and you pick a game mode. The most difficult game mode I would not suggest for almost anyone playing this game unless you play through it a couple times and understand the system. Whereas the introductory, normal, default play level would be what most people would select. But even at that play level, halfway through the game, I was only able to take about 6 hits from any given boss before I died. And that's pretty ridiculous considering I couldn't give out that damage to the bosses equally. And I understand that games are supposed to be over the top like that, but man, I have never had such a problem with this game as I've had with any other game like that. As I keep referring back to Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance, that was never an issue for me. So, in the middle of my playthrough, I had to unfortunately reduce the difficulty, which made me feel ridiculous because it was like fighting a baby. Honestly, it was easy. The transitions really aren't there. It feels like this game kind of got pushed out a bit early because you'll see the Autobot side doing stuff, and you'll never see the weird transition screen that they used to have in the cartoon show, the do-do-do-do-do, where it switches the icon from Autobots to Decepticons, and then you see the viewpoint of Decepticons and what's happening in the series. But you'll see that, like, 3/4 of the way through the game, and it just makes you scratch your head and say, well, why wasn't this in the beginning? That would have been cool. Like, what the hell? But, again, they have a problem with transitions, because at one point in time, you'll be going through the city, back and forth, shutting down generators, doing this, that, and the other, and that's cool, fine, whatever, that's not really a big deal. But the problem arises when the transition goes from, oh, the Decepticons are going to the station to go up to Cybertron, and they're using the bridge, and it's like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, you're in the ship. And it's like, well, what happened to the rest of the Decepticons, the Insecticons, the Constructicons in the city? Well, did they all just give up and I just walked straight to the ship? And so the transitions there are kind of funky in that way. They just set you up for a new level, but they don't really give you kind of like, oh, you're going that way anyways. Like, in one transition, out of nowhere, this robot comes up when everyone's just standing around and goes past everyone. And he's a Decepticon. It's like, oh, we need to stop him. It's like, did you guys not notice there's loud noise behind you? Is he completely silent? Because he was a giant truck. And that presents another thing that I absolutely can't stand about this game. You'll have moments where you're fighting with the Autobots that you're fighting with. Like, you'll have Wheeljack there to do something, and you'll have Grimlock, and you'll have Bumblebee, and things of that nature. No problem. You have up to 5 Autobots to choose from, swap between, which is cool. The problem is that they'll show up in the cutscenes once you've defeated the boss, or you've gotten through a really hard part. Where were they? Where the hell were they? Like, man, I could have really used your help. But that goes hand in hand with the difficulty spikes that happen in this game, which is why I said you're going to have to play it on the easier setting to get actually through it the first time, because you probably don't know this, that, or the other. You'll have to figure out the attack pattern of the boss and things of that nature. Again, slamming that RB button quite a lot. Not terribly bad. It's not horribly implemented, but it's just really weird, man, that all the Autobots suddenly show up when the boss has been defeated. And on top of all that, they do have missions where Wheeljack, I believe, will have to be fixing something, and you have to defend him. And again, on the harder difficulties, that's next to impossible, because all the Decepticons just go after him and blow him up. There are some Decepticons that have ranged attacks, so really good luck getting to them. Your ranged attacks have a small supply of ammo. Sometimes they can be really devastating, like a shotgun kind of electric weapon. Other times they can be ridiculous ping pong balls that you're shooting at them, Nerf cannons. And that'll have a lot of ammunition, but you don't do any damage at all to them. And it leaves you open for an attack, because you're not staggering the enemy. Speaking of combat and staggering the enemy, you do get a chance to charge up something like a super attack, which will pretty much end the fight or do a heavy amount of damage to bosses and everything else around you in area effect, which is very good. And you also have a special attack. Depending on who you choose, depends on your special attack. I stuck with Optimus, Grimlock most of the time, but there are other characters that can just run really fast or dodge or something like that. Optimus turns into a truck and does a giant circle and things like that. And it's pretty standard stuff. Not bad. I would have liked to have seen this to be implemented a little bit more, because those attacks seem like an afterthought. This does incorporate RPG elements to where you can equip weapons, guns, you'll find drops, you'll find better weapons, which is kind of cool, because, like, you beat Starscream, you get Starscream's Null Ray and things like that. That's cool, and you do get to fight all of the Decepticons that the Constructicons, Devastator. I mean, it is Devastation. If they didn't have Devastator, what the hell were they thinking? You'll be able to fight Soundwave, Ravage, Rumble, you get to fight Shockwave, Megatron, and they do have their normal transformations like tanks and stuff like that, and it's cool. It works out very, very well. I like it a lot. It's a good boss selection, but randomly I feel like they kind of ran out of enemies, because you fight foot soldiers, jets that are almost the same as the regular bosses that you do fight in certain forms, the Insecticons being the most rehashed and recycled. Graphically speaking, it is not the best and not the worst I've ever seen. So average at best. It takes the Borderlands cel-shaded style and puts a kind of cartoonish spin on it. On top of that, most of the graphics did work out, and I do have to give it to Platinum Games for developing this. I never once had my game freeze. So 10 out of 10 for that. And being able to push it out on all platforms, man. Really good job, guys. Sound-wise, wonderful music. it fits the mood every single time. The voice acting is top-notch and on point. They've got the original voice actors at certain points in time that actually did come in and voice act. Peter Cullen, Dan Gilvazen, I'm sorry, Dan, I can't say your name very well. Michael Bell, and Greg Berger, as well as Frank Welker from Megatron and Soundwave, which was just a real treat, man. It's always nice to see those guys reprising their lines from other shows, from the original show and games and things of that nature. Really, really awesome. Controls, it's a solid 9 out of 10. There are plenty of moments where I dodged but still got hit, so you can chalk that up to game mechanics or not. The mechanics are just your average hack 'em, slash 'em, beat 'em up from point A to point B most of the time, with the exception of the first few missions, which I do not understand why they did it that way. You can find different things to help you upgrade your stuff and do this and that, but in the end, you'll be able to get through it pretty easily if you stick to just standard mode. As I said before, you're going to have to understand the aspects of the dodge mechanism, the RPG upgrade system, and the level up system to actually be able to get through this game easily. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time, honestly. It's not going to be a fun game, and you might rage quit several times on bosses. But they do have a solid checkpoint system, and they do not have a life system, so 10 out of 10 for that as well. Each battle is rated based on your combat efficiency, and depending on your combat efficiency, you will be ranked a triple S to an F or D or C, whatever. I don't know. I never got lower than a D, but, you know, that was when I did very, very poorly. What would I say about this game? What else would I say? If you are a Transformers fan, it is more of a nostalgia grab than anything else, but I would definitely say that it doesn't feel like I'm playing a cartoon. It feels like I'm playing a movie version of a cartoon, and not that greatly written of one. You don't have to protect a specific human boy. A human boy doesn't go with Bumblebee with his dad, and there's just some things missing, if you know what I mean. When you get to the end of the game, you'll kind of understand how ridiculous it gets. Spoiler alert, Optimus jumps on one of the Insecticons and goes into the sky and fights Megatron in space. There you go. But he just got done fighting Megatron on Earth. So I was kind of waiting for, again, spoiler alerts, Nova Prime to be corrupted and come out. Other than that, yeah, as I said before, the transitions are ridiculous, and at one point in time, Grimlock says something doesn't smell right while they stare into darkness, and then they give exposition on why Nova Prime suddenly was the bad guy, but they never really explain it that well, and they kind of assume that you look it up and you know what's going on, which is very, very poor storytelling, because I had no fucking idea why I was fighting the Decepticons at first, and then they started referencing Nova Prime, and then the Decepticons said it was one of your own that did this, and that, and then it's like, oh, okay, what? You just said they were lying, and now they're telling the truth? What the fuck, Optimus? You know? So, you'll have a lot of what the fuck moments. If you can get past the story and just enjoy the game for the hack and slash action, it's a pretty solid game. But because of the unstable difficulty curve from just fighting a baby to fighting a friggin' champion in the arena, it's a difficult game. I was able to get through half of it on the default difficulty and then had to scale it down. Just about half. I ended up having to scale it down when I fought the tank jet combo guy and then fought Starscream. So that part was very, very difficult for me. And it probably will be difficult for you. Leave your comments in the section below if you played this game and who I would recommend it to. Like I said, fans of the series. New fans, probably not. You guys won't understand the references. You won't understand why Devastator is coming together. You won't understand the Constructicons. You won't understand the Insecticons. You won't understand Thundercracker and Starscream and things of that nature. You just won't. You won't even understand why Megatron's doing what he does, because it's not laid out and explained. This is a love letter to people who used to love the cartoons, and nothing more. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was an in-depth look at Transformers Devastation. I hope you enjoyed my review, and I've been your host, Protomario, and I'm signing out. I give Transformers Devastation a C+. This is an average game with extremely limited appeal to a wide audience, which is probably why it's priced at $49.99 instead of $59.99. A nice fat $10 discount right off day one, due to the fact that it has such a limited appeal. But for anyone who's really interested in single-player hack-and-slash games, this is the one for you. Really, there's no multiplayer here. There's not really any co-op. It's just a one-and-done story type of game. So don't spend a lot of money on it unless you are a dedicated fan. Solid C+. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Have yourselves a great day, and if you were looking into getting this game, make sure to know what you're getting into. And now, the important decision of joining the Maverick Rebellion. We are a tight group of individuals who rebel against stereotypes and greater evils that are commonly accepted. ISPs, children being conned out of games, sexism in video games. Enough is enough, and the Mavericks have had it. If you choose to subscribe or stay subscribed, you are joining the fight against injustice by watching my numerous video topics, from net neutrality to publishers covering up botched releases. The Mavericks are always informed on the issues plaguing your gaming experience today. So don't be left out in the cold, and don't let those people keep you down. Join the Maverick Rebellion today and become a member of the community that will listen and engage with you. What are you waiting for? Just click subscribe and you'll be in good company. Mavericks unite!